What was the last straw that made you go, yep, that person is definitely crazy? Became friends with a neighbor, fellow mom and military spouse when I lived in San Diego. At first she seemed so nice, a bit reserved but friendly and helpful. She became friends with a whole group of friends I had established there. Over the course of time, she began opening up. She told us she had PTSD, she had been a police officer in Virginia when one night she and her partner got fired at. She sustained an injury to her shoulder or chest. Her partner, unfortunately, passed away that same evening. A few months later, she called me, crying. She had just found out that she had non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Her husband was deployed at the time, so my friends and I rallied around her, cleaned her home, brought her meals, ran errands for her, watched her children, and so on. Hell, we even pulled or raised funds to send her and her hubby on a mini vacation to Napa Valley when he returned from being overseas. Long story short, things started not making sense to a few of us. She refused to let any of us take her to her medical appointments and insisted on driving herself. She became demanding and very ungrateful. We noticed that she didn't exhibit any signs of someone with cancer and going through treatments. We began doing some research and found out that she had never even been a police officer. She had told coworkers at her former job, 911 dispatcher, that she was fighting cervical cancer shortly before moving to San Diego. Those coworkers did not believe her to have actually had cancer. She was not really going to treatment appointments when she said she was. I literally watched her get in her car, park it behind her home a street away, walk back to her house, and then check in at a treatment center on Facebook. There was a lot more, but that was the gist. A couple of us ladies talked and decided to confront her. We had spent lots of time and funds in helping this woman, and we wanted to let her know that we were no longer willing to do that. On the day we confronted her, she tried every trick in the book. Got angry, cried, accused us of being horrible people, and so on. When I calmly stated that we knew that she had never been a police officer and that we knew she had never been blasted in the line of duty, she lost it. She pulled her shirt off. She got within inches of myself and a friend and screamed, "Oh yeah? What's this? You mean to tell me this isn't a wound?" I began pointing at the area she told us she was fired at. There was absolutely nothing there. Nothing. Not even a freckle. At this point, I realized that this woman was severely delusional and mentally ill. My mind was completely blown. She believed the lies she told for attention and sympathy. Story 2. Not too extreme, but I had a coworker that regularly talked about how so many of her friends have screwed her over in the past. At first, I believed her and felt bad, until she told us what her latest ex-friend did. After basically calling him every name in the book, of course, she and her husband decided one day to replace their furniture. This was a spur-of-the-moment decision, and since they didn't have a truck to move their stuff, they texted their friend to see if said friend could help them, along with friend's truck. Friend said, "No, I can't because I'm busy today." Crazy Witch showed up at his house and flipped out when she saw that he was home relaxing. That's how entitled she thought she was to his vehicle and his time. She screamed about every single thing she had ever done for him, petty stuff like, "Buy you a soda when you forgot your wallet," crap. Cops had to be called. From then on out, I was careful not to accept any favors from her because I'm 90% sure the only reason she would ever do a nice thing is to throw it back in your face when you have to tell her no. She used to give one of her coworkers a ride home, and I witnessed this coworker on multiple occasions offer gas money, pay for her lunch, etc. as a thank you. She always declined with, "I'm going that way anyway," with a smile on her face. Until one day a coworker pissed her off, so she ran around telling everyone that coworker was a mooch and never once paid gas money. I don't know, maybe this is more manipulative than crazy, but she was always so miserable, so it's not like she was even getting what she wanted at the end of the day, so I consider it some kind of crazy. 100% a psychopath. I'm surprised you didn't cut ties yet. Story 3. I have so many good ones for this. I made friends with a guy who was on the fringe of our college friend group. He seemed bright and we shared interests. He was a junior chess champion and I always wanted to learn, so he was teaching me. We chatted online sometimes. His parents were divorced and his father lived in Europe somewhere and he flew over for a few weeks. I'm hanging out, cleaning out a closet at my house when he messages me. He tells me a few years back he was dating a girl and she was crazy and cruel. He'd gotten out and broken all contact, blocked her and changed all of his screen names, but she'd found him and messaged him and he was upset. Would I talk to him? I said of course and ended up chatting with him for a few hours. A few weeks later, he'd been back and we'd hung out some and he expressed interest in me romantically. I told him I was seeing someone else at the time. I actually was. Guy continued to be clingy and weird. It got to a point where I wasn't sure if I was starting to dislike him because he was annoying or if he was annoying because I disliked him. He kept acting like we were dating despite my other committed relationship that predated our friendship. I took a step back from the friendship. He messaged me telling me he'd reconnect with a girl he'd worked on a group project with while walking around campus and she'd given him her number again. They planned to get coffee. I was delighted and encouraged him to pursue it because then he'd leave me the heck alone. After the date, he checked in with me. I assumed since I'd been enthusiastic and he had no other close friends. We got coffee, talked for hours, and had a good time. Good. I told him how happy I was for him. He said, "You're not upset?" Gosh, why would I be? "You're not jealous?" "No, of course not. I'm happy for my friend." "You were supposed to be jealous." "Okay, buddy. I made the whole thing up to make you jealous." "Well, that's a little extreme. I also made up the time my ex-girlfriend contacted me in Sweden because if you don't hurt people, they don't talk to you. If you don't metaphorically hurt people, they don't talk to you?" Man, that was a thing he said. Why would he admit to being a compulsive liar? I think he wanted me to be impressed by that. I blocked him in all media and discontinued that friendship. It was a wild 2 or 3 months. Why do you think that would work? Story 4. We were newly married and Hubs worked at an office that had one fun guy that we liked to hang out with. Call him S. Well, S lived at home and asked if he could rent out our basement apartment. It seemed like a great idea. Because of the extra money and he was a fun guy, it was all good for a week or so. Then Hubs had to leave to a different city for training. So S thought he had to be the man of the house. I was a busy trauma nurse on call a lot and was hardly home, but when I was, S would barbecue dinner and be really miffed if I didn't want it, etc. That's just one example, but that type of behavior escalated. Hubs was only gone for 3 days, came back, and S behavior kept escalating. One night I was going out for girls' night and Hubs had a big black tie with his company. S was not as high up and was planning on staying home. This was back in the late 90s, so I'm not entirely sure how he found out where I was with my gang of girls at a downtown bar. About midnight, all of a sudden he shows up and tells me it's time to go. It's late. The table of my work friends became totally silent and everyone was staring at me. Also, S was wearing all of my Hubs clothes, from jacket to shirt, pants, socks, and shoes. Freaking bizarre. I sent him away, but girls' night was pretty awkward after that. He wasn't home when I got home, thank God. I told Hubs everything when he finally got home and we went to bed. The next morning, we heard thumps and a lot of loud voices. Came out of the bedroom and he was moving out and had a bunch of his high school friends there. They were moving him out, but also taking all our stuff. Laundry soap, food, etc. S saw we were up and marched over and gave us a lecture about how crappy we are and how we won't fare well without him, etc., etc. And he finally left. I know he was let go of work later on and actually felt a bit bad. He probably had some sort of mental illness, but still, very creepy experience. Story 5. My husband's cousin is the only female in the family that is around my age, so when we used to go to family functions, I tended to hang out with her. Our friendship blossomed, and she was who I considered to be my best friend. We both had 3 kids, and they all loved each other, so we just spent a lot of time together. My husband always told me she was crazy, that she would turn on me. But I just thought they grew up together and had some weird kind of sibling rivalry kind of thing going on. Her ex-husband hated her. Court cases for custody were happening all the time. It was nasty. They weren't allowed to be in the same room together per court order even. I only heard her side of the story, so I, of course, just assumed it was him that was horrible. Fast forward a few years, she's remarried and has a new baby with her new husband. She's an interior decorator and has always been struggling financially. But somehow, all of a sudden, she's buying all the things. New iPods for all the kids, including mine, gaming laptop for her oldest, furniture, electronics. She pays a year of rent so she won't have to think about it. Well, I'm over there because I'm now an approved supervisor. For the supervised visitation her ex-husband has imposed through the court, she starts screaming at her new husband for not loading the dishwasher correctly and pushes him fully, with real force, down the stairs. He somehow manages to be okay, but she doesn't stop. Runs after him with clear plans to attack. The guy has to literally flee his own home. I packed up the 3 older kids and my kids and got out of there. I didn't report it because she guilted me into thinking she had PPD and would be fine. On Valentine's Day, she decides she wants to have a party for the kids. The time didn't work out for me, so I told her we couldn't attend. She lost it and called me every name she could think of. She took things I said to her in confidence and told her whole family. I got pages and pages of scathing emails. I was crushed. 5 years later, she remarried again and had 2 more babies with a new guy. She called ECF on her 15-year-old son. Had 0 evidence, but decided because she was acting weird that this must have been what happened. After a heated altercation with a new guy where police were called, she now has lost custody of all kids and begs me to come to court to be a character witness. Because I forgot to explain the money spending, she had gotten a new big client who gave her an expense account to decorate his multi-million-dollar home. She spent about $200,000 of his money and was sued. When someone has known someone for 20 years and says they're bad news, believe them. Oh, and since you're already here, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming videos. Story 6. Started digging bits of silver foil out of the tarmac at the side of the road. He'd been perfectly sane a few days earlier and I got to watch his descent, not really realizing what I was viewing until that point. This was in India, and he was Indian but hung out mostly with Westerners, so we would often talk about spiritual matters. I noticed that these spiritual conversations would get more and more esoteric until I couldn't really get what he was talking about, but it still didn't twig. The day before I found him digging up silver foil, why is it always foil? I met him on the way home from a bar. He was definitely weird then, properly creepy. That was when I first realized he had gone mad. He started an esoteric conversation with me again, none of which made sense. It was just the two of us talking beneath a tree on a dark road with nobody else around. He handed me an invisible telephone and told me my mother wanted to talk to me, so I played along, because I was buzzed. Then his eyes went wide and he shook his head, placed one hand on each side of my face and said, "No, you never talk to your mother ever again." I was frightened and went home. A couple of days later, he disappeared, as he was taken away to the mental hospital, and he only turned up again a few weeks later, head shaved. This happens every now and again, apparently. Nowadays, I can spot the signs a lot faster when people are skirting around the borders of madness, and I make damn sure to back off a bit so I don't end up in a position like that again. Story 7. I have to say it wasn't me, but a story from a coworker of mine. It was in his basement apartment one night, and after coming out of the bathroom, one of his ex-girlfriends was standing in the hallway just staring at him. He immediately told her to get the hell out, as any person would. She followed it by pulling out a steak knife from her back pocket and swinging it around, making some pretty crazy statements. He managed to get the knife away from her, and then she pulled out another one. This girl had a pack of steak knives in her pocket, then proceeded to hurt herself. I think that's when he realized she was pretty off. She survived. They're dating now. That's when I realized my coworker was crazy. For those of you saying it's fake, I get how crazy it sounds. And if I wasn't worried about keeping some anonymity, I would release all the exact details about it. It is all 100% true. If you see how crazy a person is and you decide to date them, then you're the even crazier one. Story 8. Oh god, okay. I dated a guy for 2 months and he started talking about marriage, and that was a red flag, but I didn't do or say anything. I had to move to a different country for high school, and he began to accuse me of sleeping around and going to bars where I apparently found random men to sleep with. Mind that I was young at the time and I was in the US, so there was no way I did that. He claimed that he had friends in the same town who informed him of this. But that's not all. A friend of mine sent me pictures of him with his ex behind a nightclub. I didn't say a word, hoping he'd come out clean. Accusations of me cheating became so bad that I broke it off. A year later, he was still stalking me. He told me he joined the army just to prove to me that he wanted to get better from me, all while he was dating someone else already. He started to threaten me with self-harm so I would come back to him. This continued for a few months, and he'd do this on the daily. I got so fed up with it that I told him to go the heck ahead and do the world a favor. Well, 10 minutes later, I got a call from his supervisor threatening me with a lawsuit because I pushed him to. I was in the middle of an important internship and I lost it. I told him that if they wanted to play that game, I would sue him. The guy said he will delete my phone number from his phone and I'd never be bothered again. After a few weeks of silence, I got a message from his friend saying I should get back with my ex again. Turns out it was my ex messaging from his friend's account. Next day, his friend actually told me that there was never an army supervisor and he just wanted to scare me. There were so many other things, but those are the highlights. I came back home for a summer 2 years later, and when he saw me at a cafe talking to one of my old friends, he threw a chair at me, then tried to put his hands on me while telling me that he loves me. That was the final straw. It's been 7 years since this, and he still tries to communicate with me. Story 9. So I was heading out to get groceries with my roommates, and on our way out of our house, we found a homeless man digging through our trash. It was slightly surprising since it's not every day that you find a man looking for empties under your porch. We decided he was pretty harmless, since all he was doing was looking around, plus he was actually going out of his way to clean up our admittedly disgusting parking lot of not just bottles and cans. He was sweeping dirt, grass, and our neighbors' trash that they left unprotected under their porch, which was now swarming with wasps. We got him some empties from inside, gave him a cold drink, locked the door, and left to go get groceries. When we got there, we found out that he was still there after an hour and a half, still cleaning our parking lot. We were amazed and grateful, so we struck up a conversation. He seemed like a normal guy. He used to be a business owner, he fixed roofs for a living, he made decent money before he was homeless. He used to be married. He has kids. Unfortunately, his life kind of spiraled after he got mixed up in substance use. We just sort of thought of him as a normal dude who got mixed up with the wrong substance and then got screwed over by the system. That is, until he mentioned that the construction on our main street was a plot by the city to find the Templar's treasure. That he himself was a Templar descendant. And when he claimed that I specifically am the unknowing descendant of Templars. We let him talk and tell us stories for 2 hours before he stopped. It was so wild. It's my favorite story to tell. It was great though. Even after he had finished his iced out rambling, he proceeded to finish cleaning our parking lot and he offered to do it again for cheap if we needed it. Frank, If you ever read this, we love you. Can I get Frank's contact details? Story 10. So I was friends with this girl in high school who was a grade above me, and I thought she was so cool. She had these amazing stories of things that happened in her life. After a few years, I started to wonder if she was lying. There were little things I'd catch her in. I started to think she might be a compulsive liar. And then one day, I knew when we had a conversation in the mall parking lot. We parked, got out, and began walking to the building. Here's the conversation that followed. Me. I like your outfit. Where'd you get those shoes? Her. They're my roommates. We had a party at our house and someone stole all my shoes. Me. Oh, that's terrible. I'm sorry. Her. Yeah, where'd you get your outfit? Me. Blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Her. I love that store. I got my shirt at Who Cares? And these shoes are my roommates. We took all my shoes to a bar when we were out drinking and gave them away. Me. Oh, okay. Then we keep walking, and as we get to the door, her. Let's go into Wet Seal first. That's where I bought these boots. This whole conversation happened as we walked to the mall, and her story changed 3 freaking times. And she definitely was not messing with me. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.